And she's on Zoom, so.
So cool. We'll give everybody, we'll wait a couple more minutes, see if we have anybody else drop in. I know there's a talk going on for Good Summit right now at the same time. So I think some people are on that. And we'll just kind of go over. We have someone from almost every board in. And just to go over kind of what done today, what you've what you've worked on today, what you found, and if you found any thing that surprised you or anything that you were particularly excited about or wanted to share. Just usually we don't get to, especially in hackathons, even in real life ones, we don't get to usually do a lot of cross team communication or cross idea communication. So we wanted to try and work that in to all of our events, but especially this one, where we're really focusing on the ideas and getting getting as many insights into the ideas as possible. So I'm going to, let me share my screen up here so we can see the boards.
I'll mute myself, shall I? Because I'm going to keep making strange noises.
You're fine. The joys of sticky notes. I'm like, I love it so much. Don't get me started again. I'll keep yammering on about sticky notes. So Emma, I was loving watching y'all working on here. Emma and Miriam, can't tell if Miriam's on. But if Emma, maybe you want to share a few things about, I'm putting you on the spot, but if you'd like to share a few things about what you found and anything in particular, let me know if you want me to zoom in on a particular spot or anything, and I will do so for you.
So we were kind of looking at how we can kind of use technology to encourage women to join STEM. And to kind of, we were kind of focusing on younger people, and kind of we identified two kind of main areas kind of where we could access that, which was kind of social media and kind of apps and in school. And we decided to focus on kind of more social media. So if you kind of zoom in on like the big square there, if you zoom in on that, kind of most of our ideas. So we were kind of thinking maybe we could do some sort of like social media competition. We had the idea of a coding app, like an app that you can like kind of you use the basis of coding, and it's very easy to do. There's a lot of them on the market already. So what kind of our new thing would be, how you could export your projects to social media to like a video file a lot easier. So which would mean that not only is it easier for people to share and people to kind of see like what you're doing in the app and kind of what you're coding, but it's also easier to kind of, and that kind of raises the visibility, but that also kind of provides an incentive because you can like, there is the whole thing about using kind of apps to kind of create content, and people will do that now at the minute. So this is kind of another way to kind of create content using coding and using that language, and kind of as part of that, and kind of to promote, kind of like to simultaneously kind of promote the app and to promote kind of women using the app. And we decided to kind of do a kind of a competition about like creating a code in this app that was like just for girls, and like having, so that would simultaneously again be kind of marketing and kind of aiming it towards girls, and then to kind of basically just promote that, I guess. Sorry, kind of rambling a little bit.
You're fine.
But yeah, so I think that was basically the idea, kind of a coding app where you could kind of simultaneously kind of tie in and export your projects to social media. That's very easy to kind of share the things that you've been doing, and then to kind of have like alongside that a competition kind of run through again social media, like that kind of for girls, where they can kind of present their projects for prizes.
Awesome. Very cool. No, I really like that idea of putting it out through social media. So giving, putting it out on a place where people already comfortable sharing like what they do and what they're making and stuff like that. It's a nice, a really nice way to like make people make people do something new in a space where they're already comfortable. It's not like you have to go to some scary lab to work on it or something. Does anybody want to ask? open the floor to questions. Does anybody have any questions about with Frema, what they've been working on?
Just a suggestion, maybe. What about something like a filter, like coding your own filters or something like that might be very appealing and a good way to integrate it with the social media.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great idea. That's a good one.
Throw a
Sorry,
sticky
I was
note
late
up there.
coming on.
Yeah, I'm gonna put a. Are you doing that, Catherine? Or will I?
Oh, I could throw it on.
It's grand, thanks.
I'll make it a white one. Yeah. Are you gonna see how bad my spelling is? Cool. Any other questions for anybody about what Emma and Miriam have been working on here?
Is this one project, or are there other projects? This is STEM for females, right? STEM for women, that's the subject. And are there any other proposals that you're going to go through? Or is this the main?
I think this was the main one because I think, like, I know for me anyway, I'm doing mathematics in college at the minute. I think there is kind of coding is simultaneously the most kind of interesting and accessible, like immediately accessible, and it also is a gateway to a lot of the other things. Like I think for most of the sciences now, you will always have that bit of coding. Even in biology now, they have you have to be able to code to kind of analyze, to make the kind of the analyze on your statistical analysis. A lot of that is through coding now. So it is kind of the backbone. And there also is in the coding is that it teaches you a way to think, and the kind of the very logical way that you do need to think for in mathematics, in physics, in biology, because you kind of have to think, okay, how do I explain this to a computer? And kind of that's how coding works. That's why I thought it would be a good. That's why we thought it would be a good kind of starting point and a good target area.
Thank you. The reason I was asking is because when the subject was sort of presented, I kind of went off on a very different tangent. And one of the ideas I'm just going to throw out there is that I think it's not easy for women to make progress because of the current structure of society and industry. And so, there are very few men who actually understand the issues, and very few men who can actually think outside of the current box, because we've all been trained in this kind of mechanistic thinking. But what there are groups of women who get together and they can help each other and make references. So it's almost about networking. And I was just going to throw out the one network that I see popping up on social media regularly and having quite a lot of successful women who are business orientated. Okay, so they're in the sort of the current paradigm, and that is the WIN network, WIN. Has anyone heard of that?
I haven't, no.
Okay, I'll have to look it up and see if I can put it on the thing, but it's run by Kristin Envig, who I think is Dutch, but she works out of Switzerland, and they run conferences every year. Now, it's not for people necessarily entering, but there is no doubt in my mind that getting access, it'll be easy to get access to the network. And when you get access, you get names and people who are in areas, so you can contact people who, like Antonia, the person I was mentioning earlier, who's working at Tesla, and say, what was your experience? Can you give me some advice? How do I go about it? Because even for anybody, that's tough to get into the business. They just need to know people. But I think female networks, women's networks are more resilient and more helpful than male networks, because male networks, there is no relationship involved. It's all about the money. And so it can break down very quickly when the money isn't there. If they don't see you as an asset. Excuse me?
Yeah.
We did find one organization that supports teenage girls.
We were looking at kind of Teen Talk and kind of having, I think it was Sorry,
Collaborative.
Miriam, you talk.
Yeah, collaborative, something with a support. There's already a company there called Teen Talk that you could create a collaborative project with them. They're already reaching out to the network, trying to encourage them in Ireland.
Yeah, if I may jump in. So I'm Mark from the Embassy of France. Yeah, we have been working with Teen Talk and they're very good at that. So you should reach out for the CEO, it's Joan Dolan, and she's very active.
What was that name? Sorry, I missed it.
I will put a contact name in Discord if you want.
Great, thank you.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I think there is a lot of different ways to go about it. Like definitely that concept of how do you think about how to tell a computer to do something is something that has been, I think, coming up in a lot of the different work we've done, a lot of the different events that we've held about any subject. So every subject that or every problem statement that we hold an event on, that idea of how do you communicate or how do you break down the logic of it, or the logic of the solution, or the logic of the solution you're hoping to find in a way that is either codable for a computer or codable just in a way of can be analyzed by a human statistician or somebody who just wants to learn more about it. So no, I think that's very important. And that's, something that's been around or has been a big part of kind of any degree, any sort of science or maths or numbers related degree for ages. I started my original degree in school was actuarial sciences, and that was a while ago. And it was a lot of coding, even 20 years ago. No, 15 years ago. I'm not that old. But so yeah, it's still there. Any other things? Teen turn? Oh, there it is down there. Is there anything else from? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'd just be interested to know if anybody brought up the idea of actually targeting in Ireland, the Department of Education, because, I personally, I think the education system is dysfunctional.
Yeah, we did have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the problem starts in the culture. It's not even sure that the curriculum is a bit, inappropriate for today's needs, but it's the pedagogy, the culture is very backward, if I can say that. It's not supportive, it's not enlightened, it's not open, it doesn't reflect, the sort of the dynamism and openness of modern culture. And I would say it holds people back. Definitely. Really holds people back. I saw it in my number two, and she was one person in the doing engineering out of whatever it was, 30 people in Carlo here. And people would say, "Why are you doing engineering?" It's like, you need a good slap upside the head. And this is at a background where every business, engineering, mechanistic, mathematic-based business is saying, yeah, sure, we need people who can do calculus, but actually we need creativity. And it's being drummed out of them by an education system which says, do this way, otherwise you're wrong. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that is a criticism which is leveled at the whole science community by some of the more fringe scientists. I don't know, what's the fellow's name? Rupert Sheldrake, The Science Delusion, if that pops any bells. And I think he's coming out with another edition. But that whole, like you say, coding, the mechanistic thinking is a mindset which needs to be complemented with open thinking to find solutions. So
yeah, I think kind of the beauty of coding is that you are finding solutions. You are kind of you have a problem, which is I want to create a cool filter for my content. I want to do this with my content, or I want to solve this potential differential equation. And using code, using this method, you can kind of get the computer to do the boring kind of algorithmic thinking for you, but you have to figure out how to program that in. Like you do have to find a creative solution there. So I think that, and again, I think we were discussing the very regimented system of the education system, but it's kind of something that the government would need to change, rather than, like, I think we were very much looking at it from the perspective of being a tech company, and like I think it would be, unless we were developing a product specifically for the Department of Education, I think it would be very hard for us to go in there and be like, actually the whole curriculum needs to change, because we're a company, not a government body. If you get what I'm saying, we were kind of more approaching it from that angle.
Yeah.
I totally sympathize with that. Unfortunately, I think that the change is not going to come unless
I don't.
Companies and individuals and parents whine about the problem.
Well, my daughter told me she's doing the same biology course that I did in 1987. She's doing that this year for her leaving cert, the same course.
Yeah.
They haven't changed the curriculum. So, I mean, you're dealing with that,
It's very, very bureaucratic mindset, which is clearly not what we need to solve the problems of tomorrow, because we are facing situations which are completely unimagined 5 years ago.
They're moving so fast and we're not moving with them.
We're not even realizing what's going on. I mean, look at what we've got. We've got a lockdown and the schools are open. I mean, that is not scientific. That is not epidemiologically sensible. It's madness. And why?
Although I'm really
Because
happy not to be
wants
teaching classes to high schoolers on Zoom.
Well, everybody.
I'm happy mine are in school.
But no, it's definitely, like I say, I teach high schoolers, and I'm surprised, like, our system isn't much better in terms of not being taught to the test, but I'm always surprised at how regimented the system is here. Of these are the 10 things you shall know, and that's it.
Yeah, I do physics grinds, and it's always very like, okay, know this. And physics is one of the better ones, with the kind of having the more open thinking, because it is kind of more problem solving, but it's still like, okay, these are the definitions, learn off these, that's 30%, and this is your experiments, learn off these, that's 40%. Like that's what it is, and that's what it has to be, because it's all structured around points and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's a barrier, the point system, to people taking on these subjects as well, because they know they can get higher points in easier subjects, even though they might. I was explaining about my daughter actually wanted to do physics, but she actually wants to study film production. So I was saying to her, well, there's other subjects you can do, which would be much easier for you to get higher points, so I pushed her away from it. So yes, I'm one of those mums who did that, but she really enjoys physics. So it's just the point system pushes you away from maybe what you would actually like to do.
Yeah. Or I would have been on the opposite side. I would have been, because when I was in high school, so I did all the science tests, and then I ended up with a ballet degree. So
all right.
Something completely different. So but because you got more points for the science courses, and you didn't get really nobody cared if you took the music theory class or something. But yeah, so definitely, so I'm just throwing sticky notes on the board of what we've been talking about here. So kind of that idea of incentivizing under that kind of general category of the Department of Education, incentivizing people to take STEM based courses in high school early on. Definitely. We can continue talking about this one as well. We can come back to it, but I'm going to jump over here to the measuring, communicating the SDGs. I think Elena was working on this one. I'm not sure if she's here. I don't think so, but I will. So I'll go through a little bit of what she's put on. I know she's kind of in and out for the whole thing. so she was looking at she started looking about how companies can prioritize the goals that are important to them and mapping that against their resources, and then setting up a really specific timeline for measuring them short, medium, and long term, and kind of knowing, I guess, what the expected outcomes or what the expected benefits are going to be in each of those. And then talking about linking or breaking all of that out then into people-focused environment and within the industry, and collaborating with stakeholders within the company and within society at large. I think this is one of those problem statements that's so big. So she's broken it down a little bit there. I think she's not on, but does anybody want to throw any thoughts out about measuring and communicating the progress towards the SDGs? Yeah.
I could just drop in there. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think there's something important here that a lot of companies are missing. There's a lot of companies actually doing quite a good job on mappings, to particular goals and explaining which goals are their priorities. I think what a lot of them are not doing so well is showing us where they make a step change. So this is we contribute to, I'd say, food production. So what difference do we actually make from this year to next year, and how do we advance that goal in that time frame, as opposed to just we do it, if that makes sense. I think the measurement bit is the bit that a lot of them are poor at, and then many of them are doing quite a good job on a communication, but it's not necessarily a very it's a bit of a greenwash, potentially, the communication.
And I want to say as well, like before the talk today, I had never heard of like renewable gas. I went to like look up that to see what that was, and like I still don't know like a lot of the there's probably a lot of challenges there, like a lot of dealings with the whole system, like, but that hasn't been communicated to the general public for sure. You know what I mean? Like that, like, oh, a bus was completely 100% carbon neutral, but what does that mean? Like what does that mean? And like it's not publicized. And that's something that could be publicized.
And I think that's also actually, I think you've picked up on another big challenge in this area for any company or organization, is it can be quite difficult to communicate these concepts in a snappy, readily comprehensible manner.
I think the other issue is as a grass network, it kind of seems a bit weird for kind of them to be, oh yes, we're carbon neutral. There seems to be a disconnect there, that unless you understand it, that looks a bit weird, like, because all they do is natural gas, famous for being very much carbon releasing. So you kind of have to explain that. Again, just kind of developing that
and trying to explain that to people who really, they're not, the complexities of that they're maybe not particularly willing to take on, or they mistrust it because they see it as greenwash.
But you get involved with at a lower level with green schools and the green school committees and education at a younger level. Like my daughter is very active in the green school committee, and I mean they take it in really well, and I mean then they bring it home and they explain everything. Like they're a great resource, that age group.
And I think that's actually one area where, in fact, I have to say the Department of Education, I think, has done a good job.
Yeah, but there's loads more scope there.
Well into the curriculum, and that young kids are getting it. Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right. And I mean, certainly I've heard, parents over the last 15 years, I've heard parents talking about how some of the better habits they've developed at home actually happen because of their small kids coming in, turning off the tap and stuff like that when they're brushing their teeth,
And there's more scope in the secondary school to advance it even further, and the kids are educating each other. They have a green school committee and they're educating, they would do presentations for the whole school. So if people's giving that committee the information, they can spread it, So there's a whole route there. I'm sure the same in college.
Can I ask Anya and Miriam if they see that the initiatives at the primary start at home stick around as they go through secondary? Because secondary, in my experience, has been a mind-numbing experience for many people. And of course, you have hormones happening and lots of nice distractions of social media and such like, which often push the turning off the light, turning off the tap, caring about the recycling, not driving as much. The whole thing just out the window.
No, I haven't had that experience, but then my daughter's very active in it. That's now my younger daughter, maybe not so much, but my older daughter, it's her thing, she's quite active in it. So I suppose it depends on the child, but yeah. But her school in particular it's student driven. They have a good, interest in it,
I think that's the most important thing. And I don't think change is going to come if we expect companies and leaders to do it. I think if it's driven by people, like you say, student driven, people on the ground, and they just make the change and tell their friends and just push it.
Yeah.
It's the only way, because clearly the current systems are not working, because we have known for decades about the problems.
But on the other hand,
worse.
I do think the companies do need to kind of take like even thinking about the Gas Networks Ireland, like if they didn't make the shift to renewable gas, like it's all very well and good saying, oh yes, we need to turn off the light, but we're still going to need to use the light. We're still not going to need to drive drive places. If the gas is renewable, like that, if Gas Networks Ireland makes that investment, then like even if I do leave the light on accidentally, it's a lot more. It's a lot less damaging to the environment. So like a company doing that can actually have that impact on the environment, like a much greater impact on the environment.
I tend to agree with you, Emma. I think you've got a point. I think the whole point, really, particularly with the SDGs, the whole point here is that for the first time, business is actually explicitly being made part of the solution, as opposed to depending on government and depending on civil society and depending on NGOs. And the reality is, as you say, it hasn't worked in the past. Actually, when we've depended on government and NGOs, and business has been kind of trailing behind, and they're kind of waiting for the pressure to put on. But now they're actually taking a lead in many cases. So yeah, I think that actually that's where the real power is, because that's where the money is. And you know what? The innovation will follow the money.
But they're selling to the younger generation as well, so they need to be active in this, because that's what the younger generation are. They're way ahead of us. They know what's going on.
I don't want to rock the boat, but because I'm quite a cynical person, and I'm very skeptical.
We always need one.
I think one of the issues about companies is that they have increasingly been pushed towards profit and profit alone. And so I do not trust them. I do not think they will ever do the right thing, and I do not think they will ever do it the right way. And I do not think the people that run companies care about the consequences of their actions. And I've had enough conversations with bankers, investors, and corporate leaders to know that if you probe too hard, the conversation ends, because they have to admit that they know the reality is not what they are portraying. And that if they face the reality, they will have to have difficulty paying the rent themselves. And just in the context of that, Emma, you brought up a point about, converting to gas and such like, and driving and so on. And I think one of the biggest issues at the moment is that very few, effectively nobody understands the scale of adaptation that we are facing in the very short term, despite the fact that we, not me, but all of you guys anyway, are all engineers, technically competent, have access to data which has been collected by colleagues and can do the back of the envelope sums. Very few people realize that we have to reduce consumption by 80% in a matter of years. And to do that, that means we actually have to stop using fossil fuels. And we have to stop putting fossil fuels into the embedded energy in our throwaway disposable lifestyles. The amount of plastic we consume just in the food we eat is killing the planet, killing us, killing our society. And we keep placating ourselves with kind of the idea that we're doing a little bit. And so that's okay. But we have no appreciation of the fact that the structures that we are living in are dysfunctional, and the way we live our lives is killing us. So I think the problem just has not been put on the table.
I would agree. I would agree with most of what you said, like from the company, not distrust. Like I would also be very distrustful of companies. Like you look at kind of ExxonMobil's report of them planning to increase their natural gas exports over the next few years, and also kind of accommodating, like they're like, oh, we'll build our oil rigs higher in the sea to accommodate for the rise in sea level. It's disgraceful. I just don't think that you're going to see the systemic change that we need. I don't think that can come from an individual level at the minute. I don't think there is a way. I think that needs to come from a structural problem needs to be solved structurally. There needs to be a change there needs to be a change at a governmental level, or even if they're like a company level, if that's possible. A company level would help a lot more than individual, but I think a government level, that's where it needs to be.
The governments and the companies won't do a thing unless individuals get out, stop buying products, tell their friends that they think things should happen differently.
But I don't think that's going to happen.
Action. What?
No, I think you're both right, to be fair, because companies can solve it. They can solve the problem. They're like part of the problem and the solutions as well. So they will change when there will be more money to make in being sustainable than not. So from the, like you were saying, if they stop buying products and stuff, why would people stop buying products? This is something that is really unrealistic, because we're asking people to buy and to consume things that are sustainable. Don't go to Amazon, don't go to Starbucks, don't drink your coffee, it's takeaway, because plastic everywhere with the cups. But it's everywhere, it's in every corner. So like the society is telling us not to do it, but it's available everywhere. So people have the temptation to do that on a daily basis. They won't stop doing it. They will stop only if they have an alternative, if they have another Starbucks that is saying that no, there is no cup anymore, because it's totally new system that we don't know how it's going to happen. Like bring your stuff, I don't know. But they will change only if there is more money to make in being sustainable, and taking those, like embedding this in their report or their financial reporting. Like if we show that by doing something sustainable, they will lose less money or earn more money, then they will do the shift. But before that, I don't know how the individual alone can change anything.
I think I'm afraid it was as only individuals that will change it, and companies respond to the individual's behavior. Part of the problem is the scale of the organizations. The larger companies are very much insulated from the communities in which they operate. So for example, Nestle can go and steal the groundwater from whole communities and get away with it because they're not vested in the community. But my friend Noel, who lives up the road and fixes my car, when I give him money, it's not about the money. It's about the fact that I trust Noel and Noel trusts me. Okay, the relationship, the community of barter, I buy a pig from you and give you a cow, that has been eradicated by money. So people can hide the morality by disconnecting from that relationship. And the bigger the company comes, the more like a feudal power it becomes. And those people in Exxon do not care one jot. It's like Al Gore having a house which is supposed to be eco-friendly, but it actually has consumed so much to get there. Yeah. We are deceiving ourselves, and it is, and we, the people down, are going to suffer, are suffering, because we always get the short end of the stick. That is history in this system of control.
We need the business equivalent of a plague, or the Black Plague, to come through and knock out the feudal system, and we'll have the Renaissance.
It is actually there at the moment, right? The financial system is currently broken, and they are faking it and lying.
Yeah, this is something Sophie and I were talking. We were on a talk yesterday about. We have this moment now to, everything's already shaken up. Like, just give it another little nudge and push it over the edge. I don't want to keep you guys too much over time, so I'm going to jump on to the next board. But like I said, you guys have access to the board forever. You can always keep adding comments on. So our last one, I think, I'm not sure who was working on this one.
I was working on
There
it.
we go. We're good. I knew someone.
Yeah.
We zoom in. I'll let
So,
you share.
I'm kind of someone who's coming from the background of, I have a background in STEM, but I now run an online mental health community.
Okay.
So I kind of, I left my job in STEM due to my mental health, and yeah, I run a mental health community. So I think the problem is kind of there's two customers, so to speak, with this problem, kind of in the same way that children's toys have two customers. If you're marketing them, you've got the children and you've got the parents. And in this one, you have the manager or leader, and then you have the actual employees who are the ones actually struggling with social isolation. So the manager is trying to support positive mental well-being in the workplace to increase productivity, and there's increased social isolation at the moment with people working from home, and they're concerned about the productivity and the well-being of staff and keeping the staff. And then the employees are wanting to maintain a good work-life balance, but struggling with that, with having less social contact and no outlets, nowhere to go, and they're feeling lonely. So that's kind of the problem. But it's like something that's occurred to me is there is potential for all three problems to overlap here in a way, because with the gas networks, one of the sustainable development goals that they're interested in is the good health and well-being, which plays into this. And then with STEM, perhaps there's something where you could have social contact with STEM companies, communicating with young people, and kind of like having mentoring programs, something like that, which is increasing social contact, something that isn't the typical mundane day-to-day of your normal job. That might help in that way.
May I just intervene there for a second? There's something that just kind of occurred to me when you were formulating the problem there. And there's sort of this, if you like, there's this two groups that you've identified. You've got manager and you've got employee.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest to you the manager is also an employee, and the manager is also
absolutely
equally suffering from the same problems of isolation.
Absolutely.
With kids at home, or whatever it is. Yeah. So I think maybe as well we need to think about that kind of company as community, and kind of that building that culture that's not sort of maybe as hierarchical potentially.
Yeah. Definitely.
Can you enlarge the screen a little bit? Lovely, thank you.
Something one of our things, we actually sell a product to workplaces to help promote positive mental well-being in the workplace. So it's a little kit for mindfulness on the move. And something like we can customize them, and something like I encourage is to include a contact name on one of the little cards that goes in the box, so that you have a point of contact in the workplace for mental well-being. And it's kind of coming in a little bit with like mental health first aiders and things like that. But I think that's really an area that's important.
Maureen, can I ask a question? It's maybe a little bit off subject, but it's about mental health. It's just a thought that occurred to me yesterday. I got a little bit scared actually, because I knew we were going to get this lockdown, and I guess I thought it was just a bit too late. But what I've noticed among my friends is that I get the feeling that they are a little bit more unhappy, scared, and cautious than they were 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And what I'm feeling is that because of the breakdown of society, which has been occurring because of the lack of actual face-to-face conversation with people that you know, and even the lack of touch. Okay, I know people don't think it's important, but the actual lack of physical touch, whether it be a handshake or a hug. Okay, I mean, I think people are they're being pushed unwittingly lower down the sort of value chain to survival values of fear. And what this will do is it tending to promote an insular thinking and a caution. And the fear was that my friendships are fracturing. People who I consider to be good friends, okay, who have helped me and I've helped them, and maybe long-term friends, and I'm afraid that in the coming months, it may be that not only do they just become acquaintances, but we step onto different sides of a fence, and we don't even seek or tolerate one another's views. Now, I have a lot of friends who I totally disagree with. You know, I know lawyers who are friends, for example, but they're my friends.
Yep.
Because friends are friends.
Yeah.
And I'm just afraid that even in my community, even with people that I do see occasionally, because it happens, that those relationships are fracturing. And that dynamic can very quickly precipitate the kind of bloody society that humanity has seen over the centuries. Because people look to the leader, they don't understand what's going on. You know, despite the internet, getting information is not something we're practiced at doing. We just listen to the blah, blah.
Yep.
And I'm afraid of, first of all, weakening relationships, and secondly, violence. And I don't know if you feel that that is, you know, just stupid, naive, you know,
No, I think it is a valid concern, and I think it is part of when the government is making these decisions. I do think it's an element that they've considered from like a psychology point of view of, well, what are those types of impacts that can happen, and what kind of death rate you could have if you had an actual breakdown in society. And it's why they don't want to do increased like long-term lockdowns. It's not just an economic issue, it's also a psychological issue, and you could, you know, end up with a breakdown in society that could be far more detrimental than a virus. It is definitely
You have to look at the US at the moment to see exactly what you're saying as being a horrendous reality, you know.
Yeah,
I think
there's a lot of people very concerned about civil war in the US.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's something.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Miriam.
I say we're also creating a bigger divide in our communities as well. I mean, I work with adults with disabilities, and they're literally being completely isolated, and you know, it's just gone to a whole new level for them. They were isolated before, but this is just a different ballgame altogether. And there's a bigger split in our communities, and definitely I feel there is a lot of anger out there. I had the privilege of coming across the M50 the other day, and the road rage that I encountered, not just once. Like, there's so many people who are at the edge. I think
Did you say that? My husband's actually, he does essential work, so he's allowed out and about, and he's been saying the same thing. He's saying the quality of people driving has really deteriorated dangerously.
Yeah, there is that horrible, like, angry feeling out there. It's very different this time around. So definitely mental health is a huge, but I do feel I think that divide is terrible, because I mean, our disability community, our elderly people, you know, I know we're saying we're looking out for them, but they're being cut off. People in nursing homes stuck in rooms, not allowed to leave their rooms, you know, no contact with families. And I worked with a lot of adults with disabilities who would have had day services. Now they're at home with elderly parents, and they have no interaction all day long. And so the divide is getting even bigger.
So if we're looking here at this particular issue in terms of the, you know, and I appreciate it, this is anyone who's in the situation, we're all in a part of a much bigger society. But if we're looking at the problem in terms of the connection with employee, and, you know, I'm just wondering as well if there's something here about remaining connected to the culture of your workplace, and maybe remaining connected to the purpose of your work. You know, and I sort of thinking about the bigger picture, like how do I fit into the bigger picture? It can be hard enough to explain that and get that across to people when they're all together in their respective workplaces, but does that become a lot harder when you're in working from home situation? I mean, certainly I know that there's concerns in a lot of companies about the fact that they're kind of, their secret sauce in terms of their culture may start to break down because they can't keep that same feel to the organization. Just wondering if that's an area that you look at.
I kind of wonder also how much now companies are going to have to admit that maybe the bigger picture, the purpose isn't such a great thing. Like, I came from San Francisco when Google and Facebook all moved into San Francisco. And so, you know, if you listen to Google and Facebook's propaganda, they're there to change the world and to save the world and to be a great place. And that's why it's a wonderful place to work. And then I would talk to my friends who actually worked there, and they're like, yeah, I get free food. So like,
But the reason for that behind the free food and stuff too, it's to keep people in work all the time.
Yeah.
Encourage
Don't
socializing
forget-
in the workplace to keep people in work all the time. Childcare and work to keep people there. So
Yeah.
you're getting free breakfast, you go in early. You're getting your dinner, you stay late, and you're just in work.
Yeah.
I
People
actually
are
did
big-
hear somebody just before the last lockdown, so back in March. I actually did, as I was walking out for a walk one Sunday afternoon, I heard two women walk past me the other way, and I could hear their conversation. And one of them was having the conversation of, oh, it's going to be so much more expensive for me now because I won't be getting free food and work anymore.
Sophie was talking
Yeah,
about this the
that's
other day.
like I know, do you know what, I made the same mistake over and over for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 companies or corporation that I had to go and then either leave and quit after a few weeks or leave in really bad term because I don't really like working for corporations. Like I don't like the environment. But true that when I was working at Airbnb, I took a super expensive luxury apartment in Dublin too because I had free food, and in the budget, well, you can feel it. It's fine. But then what the job was actually about, if you ask me today, I don't know what I was doing. And it's not, I couldn't even explain to anybody because I don't know what I was doing. I was sending emails to people.
Well, imagine if you were doing that now, Sophie, in the same job, but doing it from home, and how completely disconnected. You felt disconnected even when you weren't there from understanding how you were playing your part in whatever bigger picture there was.
So that's the thing. In a way, it can be a wake-up call for some people. I had a wake-up call before, but for some people to understand that what's the value of what they're doing and what's the purpose, what do they actually want to do? Because people want to see things, they want to be part of something, even in the company, in the team. They want to feel that when they say something, they can be heard, or that they will have an impact on their own ecosystem. And when you do those kind of jobs, they have no impact on anything because you can not be there, that nothing is going to change at all, like not the slightest, because you're like really part of a machine that can actually function without you, and nobody wants to feel like that. So if you're disconnected in your work, then disconnected from your colleague, then disconnected from the building as well, you have no perks anymore, you have no no incentive to do those kind of things. So I think for some people that would be, so I don't know how to say this, but in a way that it's going to be rock bottom, but in a way that they can change the way they're doing things now, which is good because we need people that understand how it works to make it change. If, to be fair, if you want to have a company that doesn't do this and doesn't like, we're going to bring you a ping pong table and a massage. We had that, and I was like, I don't want a massage. Like, if you like me, just leave me go, let me go. Like, I have friends, I have a life, I have something to do. Like, I don't want to be there and pretend that we're doing something when we're just all on Instagram or doing something. Like, I don't know. We're just like pretending that we're curing cancer and being important when we're not. And just
I think it's really interesting because you brought up to like the conversation moved out to that piece about bigger community and our friends. And then we've also got this idea of, connecting within the company and the culture there. And I think you brought something up very interesting there, Sophie, is that, any problem like this is not going to be solely about just the company. But we've also got to recognize that people have outside people, but we hope they have outside people that they're maybe able to connect with. So maybe there's something here about, is there anything that a business can do in terms of not just connecting with their own employees and the culture, but also helping those employees to reach out to their other connections as well? Whereas, or does the business even have the right to? I mean, I'm rambling here because I'm getting sort of caught up in my thinking about, is that legitimate for the business to be even thinking that way? But if they're not thinking that way, they're not thinking about the whole person.
It's just about a basic appreciation of people and saying thank you and being aware of what people do and bringing it back to the basics, like, know what your employees are doing, what part they are in the cog, and appreciating them for that, just the basics, even that, like connecting with people individually and saying, I can see what you're doing here, and, or, what a group meeting such a person did. You're connecting them and giving them value to what they're doing, that they don't feel like that they're just sending out emails and there's no point in what they're doing. So
It's all
there has
about
to
the
be.
money.
Then we go
It
back to
depends on the
the
managers
middle
as
one
well.
then, don't we?
It
Of
depends.
how do you show that this is something that is worthwhile? They're all really connected. So
It may be. I mean, it is. Yeah, a lot of it is about the money. Let's be honest about it. Of course it is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of legitimate too. But it's also, if you want to get the best performance out of people and they're
Yeah.
feeling good about what they're doing, they're going to give you their best. That's
Yeah,
also going to be
more productive.
contribute to the bottom line as well.
Yeah.
I don't really have a huge problem about it being about the money, to be honest with you, but I think that it also has to be combined with humanity and with caring, but also realizing that's how we get the best performance from people.
yeah.
And we're not
Yeah.
going to get good performance from people who are disconnected, socially isolated, dealing with mental health issues, and not motivated and probably not performing either.
Yeah. Well, and just having not even just mentally healthy people. I know this one is about mental health, but having whole, holistically healthy people. I know I was talking with, I watched the pitches for another hackathon a little while back, and somebody in that event did something similar about employee support. And it was just like, can you teach employees not to be reliant on the corporation they work for their social life and their friends and their activities and their food? And it's like they went from living at home to going to college to being babied by the corporation. It's like they have this child-parent relationship with the corporation. Like, how do we change that? Oof, that's a big one now.
Well, I was listening to a podcast from Mike Ferrick, who created an online free education platform. And he was saying that about, the time that people are spending in colleges, and that if we weren't consuming them, so I suppose the college, say a corporation consuming them, that they're there so much, they could participate more in their community, as opposed to signing up to, say, Google's yoga class. They could be out in the community participating in a yoga class. They could be joining, part of the community, as opposed to everything being under the one roof and stuck in that community. They could be out mixing with other people and creating new contacts.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's an interesting aspect to this to maybe just consider as a question, which is, imagine someone's joining a new job at the moment, which several people are. Lots of people are still changing jobs. So somebody who's joining, they're starting a new job with a new company at this time during the lockdown, where they can't go into the office and they can't see and physically meet other people. What would be good practice in that might actually help inform this particular problem, because some of the same things would probably apply. It's one of the things I'm actually kind of curious about, to find out more about how some companies are managing to do this. And I'm looking to kind of connect with, I've got a few friends who have changed jobs recently, and kind of I've been asking them about what was done to help them. I think it's a really important area, but I think it probably would also help inform our thinking on this particular problem.
Oh yeah, I think so. Cool. So, wow. I say our stand-up turned into a whole discussion. So this was wonderful. I'm gonna wrap us up, but as I said, the board will stay open forever. So if you get inspired at midnight, you're welcome to go and throw some sticky notes down. Or if you want to share a thought or a link or anything that you think people might want to see or might benefit from. Cool. Sorry, I'm just checking in on the chat. Wonderful. So yeah, we'll be done in just a minute, don't worry. And so thank you everyone for jumping on and participating and sharing all of your really great insights and thoughts and research on the event. Hopefully we'll come back tomorrow. We'll have some more stuff on there. I know we have a few people dropping in from odd time zones throughout the rest of the day. So again, thank you so much. We'll have another little chat tomorrow at 9, and we'll be on the on the Discord server and the Miro here forever. And so yeah, thank you again, everybody. This was such a wonderful discussion, and to hear everybody's talks, and thank you for coming, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.